Royal Spanish Football Federation, through its president, Mr. Pedro Roca, considers it essential to request the most sincere apologies to the World Soccer team, soccer institutions, to the footballers, especially the players of the Spanish national team and the England soccer team. Now, again, this is after weeks of turmoil surrounding the events immediately following Spain's World Cup win, where Luis Rubiales, the president of the federation, kissed Jenny Hermoso quite inappropriately, and the fallout from that event. There's just been a lot that has transpired, Nico. This feels like it was an inevitability that Vilda would be relieved of his duties, but do we think that this is kind of the first one to fall? Are we going to see more?
There's definitely going to be a structural change at the Federation, and there definitely will be people that will be ousted, people that will be put into power. For example, today, reports say that the presidential cabinet will be restructured. One of the vice presidents, who's a woman, will be put in that place. Today, for example, and somebody who was in the presidential cabinet of Luis Rubiales will be out. So Pedro Rocha, the interim president of the Spanish Federation, is clearly not playing any games at this point. He wants that structural change that so many women and some men have been asking for. When I say women and men, I am mostly talking about the players, because they're the ones that have been very vocal about this. And it felt like yesterday, and as anticipated, it felt like Vilda was going to be fired, but a head had to roll. Because legally, right now, what Pedro Rocha can't do is fire Rubiales, full stop. To do that, he would need a unanimous vote of no confidence from all of the territorial presidents of the Royal Spanish Football Federation, which he's not going to get, because a lot of those presidents are still loyal to Rubiales, because that's how politics are, and you're not going to get that unanimous vote of no confidence.
And just to be clear, Rubiales is currently serving a 90-day suspension.
So what you do is that you suspend him amid all of the pressure from around the world. I wonder what would have happened if it had not been a global phenomenon like it is. And Pedro Rocha, the first thing he needed to do was sack somebody.
Yeah.
That was
I think
very tightly associated
even
to
as a
Rubiales.
gesture, just to show that he intends to make some moves, whether or not they're just performative in nature, that's to be determined. But the other problem with that was when the laws on the books that would have essentially made it easier to remove Rubiales dictated that they didn't consider that kiss on Jenny Hermoso to be severe enough to step in. So we talked a lot about this on Attacking Third, and we had Guillaume Balaguer in on Monday to go through some of the very specific laws, some of them dating back to the 90s, presiding over these, that will essentially set a new precedent when they move forward from this. But for now, the time being, it's either that they have a unanimous vote, or FIFA decide to step in and demand that he must be removed. And that would be one of the only 3 ways that you can get him out in an expedited fashion. I don't know if we can even refer to it as expedited at this point, because it's drawn out to quite an embarrassing display for everyone involved.
It feels like the course of action, though, is eventually that Rubiales is going to be gone.
We would have to. There's no question. The problem is the system is so toxic and complicit. Rubiales appointed Vilda. They're all intertwined in the worst possible way. And so you're going to have people still carrying water for someone who essentially should be removed. It's the problem across the board.
Susanna mentioned a fall from grace. This fall, it takes longer than the opening credits for Mad Men. We've been talking about how bad the Spanish Federation has been since before the World Cup started. You have players trying not to play for the team, asking for an apology, trying to get people fired. And no one has listened to the players. It seems like this new president, at the very least, and I know this apology seems far too late and for very many far too soft. There's only so much that can happen with the rules that are in place. You've mentioned that already. There needs to be unanimous votes for certain things to happen. But at the very least, there are changes. And the fact that an apology and a very strong, a very, sort of like open apology has been given to the footballing world, at the very least, seems to me like it's a step in the right direction. Because one thing we haven't really been able to do is celebrate this women's team for winning the World Cup.
Funny enough, in that apology, it was released yesterday afternoon in Europe. It was a 3-page apology. And the last sentence, like the last paragraph was, and on top of all of this, like, we want to congratulate the women again for winning the final. Can I just talk about real quickly? Yesterday, Vilda spoke to Spanish radio.
Yeah.
He went, the day he was fired, to La Cadena Ser on the program El Larguero, and he had like a 40-minute interview, one-on-one with the host of that program. That probably was a risky interview to go in, considering how boiling the situation was.
I would say counter, no. Because Spain, that federation, and he himself have leveraged the media, very select portions of it, from the jump from Les 15. So I think it was very selectively done, and I think that he wouldn't have gone somewhere he didn't.
He wasn't going to speak to anybody, but I've been listening to El Larguero for a really long time, and I respect their journalistic integrity. And I think Manu Carreño, who's the host of that program, did a fair job asking the tough questions and goading him, and well, not necessarily goading him, but asking the tough questions, the uncomfortable questions that needed to be asked. And he had his way of, because a lot of the questioning falls on Rubiales' actions, and he kind of took a step back to that and said that that's almost in Rubiales' court to answer. He wasn't. He didn't.
I think I'm okay with that. Not necessarily skirting a question, but saying, "Listen, it's not my place to speak on something that he did, or his actions, or his mental state during something to that effect."
Right. And I think at the end of the day, what Vilda, it was obvious after the interview, is that his allegiance is still with Rubiales. He didn't come out and like brashedly condemn the kiss.
He applauded the man,
So they asked him that, and he kind of sidesteps the question when he was when Rubiales in the General Assembly said there's this false feminism within Spanish football, blah blah blah, and he was clapping during that. He kind of sidestepped the question. You could tell, I think, in his sidestepping and his non-direct answers, that he was trying to get out of that unscathed, and that speaks more volumes than, because as a journalist, you can keep on being very intense with the question and being persistent, but he's still going to sidestep.
To be clear, I'm not questioning the integrity of the journalist in this instance. I'm just saying we all know that beforehand he probably gave very strict parameters as to what he did and didn't want to talk to.
Right.
And as a journalist, you know that you try to inch a little bit closer, and then he's going to answer whatever he's going to answer. But I think that he still chose probably very carefully who he elected to spend that time with.
He full out denied the allegations of Les 15, by the way, which... That's that. The allegations are the allegations. We interpret that as it is. And the thing that like irked me when I heard it, because he went back to ask so he could clarify about the situation of the federation using Jenny Hermoso's words and manipulating them to help her defend Rubiales. Exactly. He said verbatim, what Jenny said is her truth. And that can be interpreted as you want to interpret it. And that was the part that, okay.
I think it's so clear that he's everyone's thinking about themselves in this situation, and he's trying to protect himself, and he's trying to distance.
Coming off of a World Cup win.
Exactly, trying to distance himself from Rubiales.
But they're still also protecting each other.
100%.
With that,
he appointed him. I mean, he's been the head coach since 2015.
Not only did he appoint him, he ensured that he stayed in this coaching role.
Exactly.
Even when the players brought the original claims forward and asked for change. A lot of them didn't even ask for him to be removed. They said, we just need these changes implemented immediately.
Yes. We won't play. And the 23 players have now come out and said they will not
It's now up
represent.
to 81 plus players, plus the men's side, plus the Spanish captains that are now speaking out, which, granted, it's a slow leak, right? But at least they've now stood up.
It's taking a long time. I mean, this has been going on for weeks now, and the fact that Jorge Vilda is only now getting fired, and this is like I said, the first domino to fall. I do think that we're going to see more changes there because they have to, because the footballing world as a whole will not tolerate what has been going on. It's 100% a reckoning, but I don't have a lot of faith in the Spanish Football Federation to get this done in a swift manner and to make the right moves along the way. Even when you look at Montse, who is appointed the head coach, that was his number two.
Yeah.
So really, there's not a ton of change at that level.
Within Spain, I think it's difficult to find an immediate fix within Spain that is not closely associated to Vilda, because Vilda has been working for the last 17 years in women's football. He's been appointing the managers of not only the U19, the U17s, and within the federation, he's been... I don't want to give him credit because it's a lot of the players pushing for change.
All of the hands and pockets that Rubiales has been in, it's going to your point, it's going to be very difficult to find somebody
within Spain.
I would hope, though, however, I think I would have probably suspended the search for a little bit and kind of put some feelers out.
The thing is that they have Nations League right now.
Exactly. It puts everyone in a bad position. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, quite frankly, without a coach, with a coach at this point, they're probably in the same mental state, although they'd probably be playing more freely, I'd argue, with anybody else. It's just unfortunate to see that the quickest, easiest change is, hey, we're going to implement somebody that has been around this team for a length of time, and prior to this was a player. So you wonder what, I mean, until she issues a statement herself, I would love to know what her general thoughts on all of it are.
100%.
And when you're silent, you're also complicit. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, who were you talking about?
Montse.
About Montse.
Yeah.
It's also, I mean, this is the first women head coach in Spain's
Spanish women's national team.
Yes, in their history.
I would like there to be more
imagine
gravitas and positivity attached to it.
100%, but I, as a woman, this is where my head goes. I'm wondering what kind of pressure she's under, and what kind of threats maybe have been made to her about what she can and cannot say. And the position that she in is very precarious.
No,